Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's hard to follow an inspiring marketing guy, but I'm gonna try my best. And I got to talk a little bit about football. I spent 25 years in Nebraska, and there are a lot of Nebraska fans at the Railroad in Spring, Texas. And every time I go by one, I said, "You guys have run away from Texas and OU. I can't believe it." That's the reason they escaped to the Big Ten. But anyway, let me begin with a map to acquaint you with Union Pacific, those of you who don't know the reach of the railroad. We blanket the West. We serve many major ports on the West Coast and the Gulf. And we've got 6 gateway slots into Mexico. And I want to recognize 2 of our great customers, the folks from Dow and BASF, who are here right in the center, symbolic of the strong support they provide to the community here. You walk around the college campus, you see the buildings that they've donated, and we've been involved in some of the activities down here, and you guys have a lot to be proud of. Our business mix is one of our strengths. It's very diverse. When one commodity, like industrial products on the lumber side, is down, others are up. Right now, as I'll explain later, intermodal is a real challenge for us, looking at the economy. Infrastructure, capital investments. Railroads are very intensely capital, and we generate our own capital internally. We don't rely on government funding, on user charges. Our industry spends the most percentage-wise of any American industry in capital, looking to 17 to 18% of our revenues, and you can see at UP we're up to $3.3 billion this year. The capital we've invested over the last few years has produced results. It's increased our train speed, which is, of course, extremely important when you look at our ability to serve customers, and reduced the time that our cars have to spend in terminals as new freight trains are made up. And this success has been reflected in what our customers are saying about us. We survey them on a monthly basis, and from this chart, you can see the positives we've seen from 2005 up to 2011. We're very, very pleased in the direction we're heading. We still have further to go, of course. This is an example of what's happening when you look at the economy. Folks look at railroad car loadings as an indication of what's going on with the American economy. And if you look at this chart, you can see the downturn that occurred in 2010. This is an indication of this year against last year. And the thing to point out is intermodal. Intermodal is down. That reflects the situation in the retail markets, and down particularly for us is imports from the Pacific Rim. The domestic intermodal, which is moving off the highways to the railroads, is still growing a bit, but we've seen a big downturn in imports from Asia. We've talked a little bit about the highway situation and the important role of railroads in the future. Here's a projection when you look at distances and market share, truck market and the rail market. Obviously, as the distance gets greater, the opportunity to move freight on an intermodal basis increases, but we see a shift. When you look at truck driver shortages, highway congestion, fuel prices, truck costs, we feel this is a strong area for growth for our industry. One of the key problems we're facing right now is the drought situation in Texas. I want to talk a little bit about that. Given the lack of rain and the fact that there's a lot of clay in the soil, we're seeing the track shift a lot. And in Texas, we have a situation where we have had to go out and work on almost 1,000 miles of railroad to come out there, pack new ballast in, realign the track. It's created slow orders. You might have a normal speed of 45, 50, 60 miles per hour with a freight train. We're down to 10 miles an hour in some places where you've got the conditions that I've spoken of. As you can see from the chart, we're finally turning the corner on that. We've improved the situation by about 10% in in the last few weeks, but it's a challenge and it's an expensive one. The other issue, of course, that you've read about is the fires that have been occurring in parts of the state around Smithville up in East Texas. Fortunately, we haven't lost any facilities as a result of that, but our lines have been closed down as fire departments have needed to come through and battle those blazes. This is a tamper. I talked about realigning the track structure. These machines are out there working every day in trying to bring us back to the proper speeds. I thought I'd finish by showing you a map of the rail system in the Brazoria County area. This is from an old railroad atlas. It shows the existing lines. The Union Pacific lines are in yellow. The BNSF, the pink, and the blue is Kansas City Southern. The BNSF has trackage rights over our line through here. That's the original St. Louis, Brownsville, and Mexico Railroad that was built here around the turn of the last century. We've seen a lot of growth. We continue to invest in that in our railroad here. When I came to town, I hadn't been here for about 3 months, and I drove down to Freeport, and I looked at the skyline, and I saw this huge bridge. That's the bridge we've put in at a cost of $19 million to replace the one that was wearing out to get access to Mike's Port up to current standards. We've spent, looking at some of the regional projects, we've spent about $11 million in the last 5 years with improvements at our yard in Angleton and about $5 million at the Velasco yard here. So we continue to invest. We look forward to the growth that Brazoria County we think will continue to enjoy, and want to remain a good corporate citizen and an important part of the economy here. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague from Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
Thank you, Joe. Hang on just a second. Got a little something for you. Small token of our appreciation.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you being here. Our next rail presenter, David Fleener. He was appointed to his current position as Assistant Vice President, Automotive Marketing in 2011. And in his role with BNSF, Dave leads the team in charge of marketing and sales responsibilities for all automotive movements on the BNSF. Began his career in the railroad industry with the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1990 as manager, yield management in San Francisco, California, and he's held several different positions throughout the company. In 1993, moved to the Santa Fe Railroad in Chicago, Illinois, in the newly formed logistics group, and he worked logistics there. He was promoted to Assistant Vice President, Intermodal and Automotive Equipment, and responsible for an annual budget of $350 million. Made his move to marketing and sales in 1998 as Assistant Vice President, Truckload Marketing and Sales. The marketing of tank containers and perishable products was added to his portfolio in 1999, bringing the total revenue responsibility to $600 million annually. Served as Assistant Vice President, Sales, Industrial Products from 2003 until his current appointment. Bachelor of Philosophy from Miami University and a Master of Science from Northwestern University. And he is very involved in his community, married and has 2 children, currently resides in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave, thank you for being here today. Thank you, sir.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. One thing I left off my bio was I have 25 years of experience in the transportation industry, and I started off back in 1983. And if you guys remember, that was back in the last recession. And I was fortunate to start in transportation. The only unfortunate part, I was on the back of a garbage truck picking up garbage. So, okay, a lot of talk about drought. Like the UP, we span the western United States, and we've been very affected by rain this year. And actually, one of our folks talked about the Canadian government. They used water as a form of terrorism on us this year. They had a really big problem up in Canada, and they let the water out of the dam, and this little river up there called the Souris River flooded our main line in North Dakota and took us out of service for about a week, and that's a big deal for us. This is in Kansas. We were out of service here for 75 days, and if you look at that, see our main line going through there? This was on June 10th. 3 days later, that's what it looked like. And it was out of service for 75 days. These floods cost us about $350 million this year to fix. I did hear reference to this. This is what most people think of when they think of trains blocking the railroad crossing. But, you know, when we talk about infrastructure, we're a very capital-intensive business, and you'll see a lot of similarities between my presentation and Joe's. 18% of every revenue dollar goes into the business. Our customers are very heavily invested in infrastructure, not only supplying it, but also investing in it. In Brazoria County, we find you guys very friendly to do business with. Larry Bueller has been very helpful in getting us some being responsive to our customers. We really appreciate the work he's done for us. And just to give you an idea of the impact that a friendly versus a not so friendly business environment can have on you. In Southern California, we've been trying to develop a new intermodal facility for about 5 years now, and we are still working through the permitting process. In that same time period, in China, they built a 500-acre island, an 8-mile line through and this is in the ocean, out to the island, and got a terminal up and running in those same 5 years. And we haven't even got permits in Southern California. So that is significantly impacting the way the U.S. is competing in the world economy. Again, very capital intensive, 18%. Lots of fun facts up here. You can read them. I'll click through it pretty quickly. But probably the biggest thing that I like to tell people is, you've heard the expression, the tightest ship in the shipping business. They're one of our largest customers. They ship UPS ships 500,000 trailers a year on the BNSF. They don't mention us in their ads, however. This is a huge thing, and one of my customers in the rock business likes to say rooftops drives the demand for business. And here in Texas, we are, I love the way they describe this. Every person out here consumes on average 10 tons of rock a year. And we lead the nation in that. So we should all be proud of all the rock that we consume. One of the nice things about it, I did hear Mike talk about, or maybe it wasn't Mike, maybe it was the other guy, barging the rock. Both Joe and I like to rail the rock into Texas. All right, same sort of volume slide. We lost 20% of our volume in 2006, and we're making a pretty steady return. We're not back to where we were. The thing that's different, though, is the kind of business. Housing starts, 2.3 million housing starts in 2006. This year, a little less than 600,000. So that is a dramatically different business than it was just 5 short years ago. Capital, it's a big deal for us. And if you look, this is a very busy chart, but down at the bottom, the orange bar, that's what we put in the railroad every single year. That goes into the track, into the ballast, into the steel. We spend $1 billion, $1.5 billion every year on that. Got to do it so we'll be safe and be able to get your product to market. The other thing to point out here is this year, 2011, you guys may have heard, we are Warren Buffett's largest company. And this year represents an all-time record in capital spending for the BNSF, a little over $3.5 billion. So again, that's an indication of Warren's belief in the future of the business and his whole philosophy about investing for the future. We have 4 business units. I'll deal with industrial products later because that's where I'm at. Consumer products, that's intermodal, that's containers, trailers. We love truckers. They're our biggest customers on the railroad. Agricultural. The big thing there that's driving that business is China and the Far East. Their diets are changing dramatically. They are moving to a much more westernized diet. So as a result, they need corn, they need wheat, they need soybeans. They need to feed the animals. So agricultural exports to China are tremendously growing. And in coal, we like hot summers, probably not as hot as this one. This is our 70th day in Fort Worth over 100 degrees this year. and we like cold winters also. All right, industrial products. Again, there's a lot of pictures up there. A lot of these commodities we haul out of Brazoria County. As Joe mentioned earlier, you know, there's the plastics folks. We love Dow, we love BASF. They're both my customers, actually. There's a gold rush going on that I haven't heard anybody talk about. I'm going to get to this pretty quickly. And here, the thing to show here is that this chart shows all of BNSF volume in the pie chart, and then it breaks down industrial products down in the specific business units. And that one over to the far right is what we call construction products. And construction products is anything that goes into basic industries like steel, like rock, like cement, and that one is growing significantly. The one next to it, building products, used to be larger than construction products, but because of the decline in the housing market, that's what you're seeing from that. Okay, this is the gold rush I'm talking about. And you guys have probably heard of this, the fracking of wells, and it's a pretty amazing thing going on out there. And I don't know, everybody heard of Bakken Shale? Okay, that's a little known place up in North Dakota. North Dakota has the lowest unemployment rate in the country right now. Property up there, property values are skyrocketing because if you look at that map, the tan part of the map shows you where there are oil plays, and the orange tells you where there are gas plays. And that is significant because not every shale produces the same sort of oil and gas. And I know there's people out here that know a heck of a lot more about this than I do, but the thing that's going on is that all the commodities needed to frack a well are moving by rail into North Dakota. And the oil coming out of North Dakota is moving by rail. And the same thing is happening in these other locations. Down here in Texas, we have the Eagle Ford Shale. It's a little heavier gas, a little more gas, a little less oil, but again, same thing. The big one out there on the East Coast is the Marcellus Shale. This stuff is just driving investment that 2 years ago people didn't even think about. And I'll give you a good example. All the plastics customers, all the big people, ExxonMobil, LyondellBasell, Chevron, Phillips, those are all my customers. 2 years ago, they told me they would never build another plastic cracker in the U.S. And in the last 6 months, all of them have announced new plastics production in the U.S. And that's pretty phenomenal. And you think about it, some of it's going to happen down here in Brazoria County. So, you know, that's going to mean jobs, that's going to mean infrastructure. That's all good stuff. You know, when Mike put up the chart about the LNG terminal, there are other places. I was meeting with an investment banker up in New York City, and he was saying that they spent $60 million on a LNG export terminal in Maine. Well, the U.S. is going to turn into, 3 years ago we thought we were going to import liquefied natural gas. Now we're going to export. I mean, I just cannot tell you how phenomenal that is. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, this is a picture of the horizontal drilling. You've probably seen it in the newspaper and all that. But the thing that strikes me is that in the past what you did is, you know, you had this pool of oil down there, and the pool of oil needed like a non-porous rock underneath it in order to catch the oil. And so when you're drilling, you're trying to find that pool. Well, now when you're doing shale, you know where it's at. There's no finding a pool. You just drill down, you find the shale, and you go horizontal. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, but what that tells me as a layman, basically every time they drill, they find what they're looking for. So they're very productive, and the technology for this has just expanded dramatically. Oh, I'm running out of time. 3 years ago, the break-even price on a well in North Dakota was $80. Now it's down to under $30. So that tells you what's going on out there. I'll skip over the crude oil and just say the thing that's going on in gas, that's what's driving U.S. plastics production, is because we can make plastics out of ethane. Ethane comes out of natural gas, and because we think there's a long-term viable source of ethane in the U.S., that's why you see companies investing. So, sorry, I didn't hear the chime, but I see the red light. So, thank you.